The weight of the crown was a physical pressure on Prince Chinedu's temples, even when he wasn't wearing it. In the opulent silence of the palace, surrounded by aides and tradition, every breath felt choreographed. He watched from his balcony as the city of Enugu buzzed with a life he was forbidden from touching. Girls from influential families, their smiles sharp with ambition, were paraded before him, each seeing a title, not the man. A deep, restless yearning for authenticity clawed at him. He needed to breathe air untainted by expectation, to be seen for himself. That night, he made a decision that would shatter the careful order of his world. He summoned his most trusted aide, Nnamdi. "It is time for me to truly learn about my people," he declared, his voice firm with a resolve that brooked no argument. Not from these palace walls, but from among them. A week later, stripped of his royal robes and driven in a common car, Chinedu became Chidi, a new economics student at the University of Nigeria, Enugu. His new world was a stark contrast to the palace's marble floors. The hostel was cramped and noisy, the shared bathroom a culture shock, but the freedom was intoxicating. For the first time, he could walk into a lecture hall without everyone bowing, could argue a point with a lecturer without being deferred to. He felt invisible, and it was the most powerful he had ever felt. But as he navigated the crowded campus, he knew this fragile anonymity was a ticking clock. One wrong move, one recognized face, and the entire carefully constructed facade would come crashing down. The roar of a struggling Keke engine was Amara's daily alarm clock. She lived in a two-room face me, I face you apartment with her father, Papa Emeka, whose life was measured in the daily hustle of navigating Enugu's chaotic streets. While he battled potholes and impatient passengers, Amara battled her textbooks, her ambition her only compass out of poverty. Her small table was a shrine to her determination. Neatly stacked notes, a carefully budgeted list for the week, and a single goal: to graduate with a first-class degree in accounting and give her father a better life. She saw the weight of the world in his stooped shoulders each evening and vowed to lift it. "My daughter, the future accountant," Papa Emeka would say, his voice rough, but his eyes full of pride as he handed her his meager daily earnings for safekeeping. Amara would meticulously calculate their expenses, setting aside every spare naira. There was no room for frivolities like the latest clothes or campus parties that other students enjoyed. Her life was a straight, narrow path of lectures, the library, and home. She was respected by her peers for her sharp mind and quiet dignity, but also seen as somewhat unapproachable. Love was a luxury she couldn't afford, a distraction she couldn't risk. Her heart was guarded by a fortress built from struggle and responsibility. Fate chose a crowded lecture theater for its first move. Chinedu, still adjusting to the jostling democracy of student life, found an empty seat next to a girl deeply engrossed in her notes. He accidentally bumped her arm as he sat, sending her pen rolling to the floor. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice naturally carrying a tone of command he quickly tried to soften. She looked up, and for a moment, Chinedu forgot how to breathe. Her eyes were deep pools of intelligent warmth, and her slight smile held no agenda, only a quiet patience. "It's fine. It's just a pen," Amara replied, retrieving it. Her voice was calm, like a steadying anchor. When the lecturer posed a complex question about fiscal policy, a silence fell over the hall. It was Amara who raised her hand and delivered a concise, brilliant answer. Chinedu was captivated. He was used to women who spoke to impress, but Amara spoke to enlighten. After the lecture, he gathered his courage. That was impressive. "I'm Chidi. I think I might need a study partner who actually understands this," he said, hoping his smile didn't betray his nervousness. Amara assessed him for a second, seeing not a prince, but a seemingly earnest student. "I'm Amara." "The library, 4 p.m. Don't be late," she said. before turning to leave. Chinedu stood rooted to the spot, his royal heart beating a frantic common rhythm. The library became their sanctuary. Under the soft glow of reading lamps, Chinedu discovered a world far more captivating than any palace hall. Amara was sharp, witty, and unafraid to challenge his opinions. She debated economic theories with a fire that came from seeing their real-world impact on people like her father. Chinedu, drawing on his extensive but theoretical education, found himself truly learning for the first time. He saw the Nigerian economy not as charts and figures in a ministerial report, but through the story of a Keke driver's daily struggle. One evening, as rain hammered against the library windows, they shared stories. Chinedu delivered his carefully fabricated past, an only child from a middle-class family in Abuja, studying hard to secure a good job. It felt like ash in his mouth. In return, Amara spoke of her mother's passing, her father's sacrifice, and her dream of building a small accounting firm. Her honesty shamed him. "You have no idea how refreshing you are," he said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. Amara looked at him, a faint blush on her cheeks. "And you're not like the other guys, always showing off." In that moment, the lie between them felt like a physical barrier, and Chinedu knew he was falling for a girl who loved a man who didn't exist. The invitation to Amara's home was a test Chinedu hadn't prepared for. "My father wants to meet the person responsible for my improved mood," she said teasingly. Panic, cold and sharp, seized him. How could he, a prince who had never set foot in such a home, convincingly play the part of an ordinary student? He arrived at the compound in Odbete, his heart pounding. The air was thick with the sounds of life, children playing, neighbors arguing, the scent of pepper soup and burning firewood. Papa Emeka, a man with calloused hands and a weary but kind face, shook his hand with a firm grip that spoke of a lifetime of labor. The single room was small but immaculate, a testament to their pride. As they ate pounded yam and bitterleaf soup from a shared bowl, Chinedu watched the easy, loving dynamic between father and daughter. He saw the way Amara seamlessly helped her father with his old phone, the way he proudly spoke of her. This was real. This was the Nigeria he was meant to lead but had never truly known. When Papa Emeka looked him in the eye and said, "Take care of my daughter. She is all I have," the weight of the old man's trust felt heavier than any royal decree. Chinedu's "I will, sir," was the most sincere promise he had ever made, and the most terrifying, because it was made under a false identity. Back at the palace for a mandatory family gathering, the opulence felt alien. Chinedu moved through the rituals like a ghost, his mind replaying the simple evening at Amara's home. His father, the Igwe, a man carved from oak and tradition, noticed his distraction. "Your mind is elsewhere, my son. These distractions are beneath you. Remember who you are," he boomed, his voice leaving no room for dissent. Later, his mother, the queen, softer but equally steadfast, took him aside. "The daughter of the Minister of Finance has been asking about you. She is a suitable match. This frolic of yours at the university must end soon." The word frolic felt like a slap. What he had with Amara wasn't a game. It was the most real thing in his life. That night, Nnamdi delivered his weekly security report, his tone laced with concern. "My prince, your cover is holding, but it is fragile. There are whispers. A girl from a wealthy family here in Enugu claims she saw you at a campus cafe. I managed to dissuade her, but the risk grows." Chinedu felt the walls of his gilded cage closing in. He looked at a photo on his secret phone, a selfie with Amara, her head resting on his shoulder as they studied. He was living a double life and the collision was inevitable. He had to tell her the truth, but the fear of losing her, of seeing the warmth in her eyes turn to betrayal, kept him paralyzed. The lie, once a shield, was now a prison. The campus cultural festival was a riot of color, music, and vibrant energy. For Chinedu, It was another lesson in the beautiful chaos of the life he'd been denied. Amara, freed from her usual seriousness, dragged him to dance to a high-life band. In that moment, surrounded by sweating, laughing students, he was just Chidi, in love with a beautiful girl. He forgot about the palace, the throne, the lies. He bought her roasted corn and they ate it by the roadside. The simple act feeling more intimate than any royal banquet. As the sun set, they found a quiet spot under a large mango tree. The air between them crackled with unspoken words. Amara, Chinedu began, his voice thick with emotion. Since I met you, the world has changed. The colors are brighter. You see me, the real me, in a way no one else ever has. Amara's eyes shimmered in the twilight. Chidi, you make me feel like I can dream bigger, like my world isn't so small. He leaned in, and their first kiss was soft, tentative, a promise sealed. It was perfect. And as they pulled away, Chinedu's heart shattered because he knew this perfect moment was built on the foundation of a devastating lie. The truth was no longer a choice. It was a necessity. The plan was for a simple, honest confession. He would take her to a quiet restaurant, hold her hands, and tell her everything. He practiced the words in his mirror. Amara, my name is not Chidi. I am Prince Chinedu. But fate, it seemed, had a crueler sense of timing. As they walked through the bustling Ogbete main market, choosing fabric for her father's upcoming birthday, a black SUV with tinted windows and royal insignia pulled up abruptly beside them. Before Chinedu could react, the door swung open and Nnamdi jumped out, his face a mask of urgency. My prince! You must come at once! Nnamdi's voice, loud and formal, cut through the market's din. The word prince hung in the air like a gunshot. Chinedu froze, his blood turning to ice. He turned slowly to face Amara. The confusion on her face was rapidly morphing into dawning horror. She looked from Nnamdi's bowed head to the armed guard in the front seat, and finally back to Chinedu's pale, stricken face. The pieces clicked into place with devastating speed. The way he carried himself, his unfamiliarity with common things, the depth of his knowledge on things he shouldn't know. Prince? She whispered, the word a venomous accusation. The fabric she was holding slipped from her numb fingers and fell into the dust. The ride back to her home was a silence so profound it was deafening. Chinedu tried to speak, to explain, but the words died in his throat under Amara's stony gaze. When they reached her compound, she got out of the taxi without a word. But he followed, desperation giving him courage. Amara, please, let me explain. She spun around, her eyes blazing with a fury he had never seen. Explain what? How you lied to me for months? How you made a fool of me? Was this all a game for you, your highness? Slumming it with the poor Keke driver's daughter? No, it was never a game. What I feel for you is real, he pleaded, grabbing her arm. She wrenched it away as if his touch burned. Real? Nothing about this is real. You are a prince. I am nobody. Did you and your palace friends laugh about the poor girl who actually believed you loved her? Her voice broke, and the sound shattered something in him. Papa Emeka emerged from the room, his face dark with concern. Amara, what is it? Amara looked at her father, then back at Chinedu, her expression now one of pure, unadulterated hurt. Ask him, Papa. Ask the prince what he is doing in our home. Without another word, she turned and disappeared into the room, slamming the door shut and locking out the shattered pieces of their relationship. The palace walls had never felt more like a prison. Chinedu's explanations to his parents about his love for a commoner were met with cold, implacable dismissal. You have had your fun, Chinedu. Now it is time to be a king, the Igwe stated, his voice final. Meanwhile, in the small Face Me I Face You apartment, a different kind of storm was raging. Papa Emeka, once warm and welcoming, was now a pillar of righteous anger. He played with you. He played with both of us. Do you think a prince can marry you? You will be his mistress, a story for him to tell his royal friends. I forbid you from seeing him again. Amara, numb with grief, could only nod. The humiliation was a physical pain. Every memory they shared was now tainted. Every laugh, every kiss, recontextualized by the lie. She saw his hesitation not as shyness, but as calculation. His questions about her life, not as interest, but as anthropological study. She gathered the small gifts he had given her, a book, a scarf, and shoved them into a box, her tears falling freely. The love she had cherished now felt like a disease she needed to purge from her system. The battle lines were drawn, not just between two lovers, but between two worlds, and the chasm between them seemed impossibly wide. A week passed. Chinedu's calls went unanswered, his messages unread. He stood outside her lecture halls, but Amara would walk past him as if he were invisible, her face a mask of cold indifference. The pain was a constant gnawing ache in his chest. He couldn't focus on his studies, on his duties, on anything. He had to make her understand. He decided to write her a letter, a long, heartfelt letter detailing his entire journey, from the gilded cage of the palace to the liberating moment he met her. He wrote of his fear, his loneliness, and the genuine, terrifying love that had grown from a simple deception. He slipped the sealed envelope to her friend Ada, promising her it was vital. When Amara received it, her first instinct was to tear it up unread. But a sliver of the woman who had loved Chidi, a fragment of curiosity stayed her hand. That night, under her mosquito net, she read it. The words were raw, pleading, and painfully sincere. He didn't ask for forgiveness, he only asked to be heard. He spoke of her father's handshake, of the taste of roasted corn, of the sound of her laughter. He wrote not as a prince, but as a man who had lost his one chance at true happiness. When she finished, the letter was damp with her tears. The fortress around her heart had developed its first dangerous crack. The crack in Amara's resolve was a chink of light in Chinedu's dark world. He knew a single letter wouldn't mend the damage, but it was a start. He began a campaign of quiet, respectful persistence. He no longer ambushed her, but he made his presence felt. He would pay for her Keke fare in advance anonymously, only for the driver to tell her Ogachidi had already taken care of it. He started a scholarship fund at the university's economics department in her father's name, ensuring the credit went to an anonymous benefactor, knowing her sharp mind would eventually trace it back to his world. Papa Emeka remained unmoved. He is buying his conscience, nothing more, he'd grumble. But Amara was watching, thinking. She saw the news report about the new scholarship for children of transport workers and connected the dots. This wasn't the act of a man who was toying with her. It was the act of a man trying to show he understood her world, even from a distance. The anger began to slowly recede, replaced by a confusing whirlwind of emotions. Could his love have been real, even if his identity was a lie? The question haunted her, refusing to leave her in peace. The annual New Yam Festival at the palace was the biggest event of the year, a spectacle of tradition and power broadcast across the nation. This year, the pressure on Chinedu was immense. It was expected he would publicly acknowledge a potential bride. His parents had all but settled on the minister's daughter, Adaobi. As he was dressed in his heavy beaded regalia, his heart felt like a stone. He was being paraded like a prized bull, his future being decided without his consent. From her small living room, Amara and her father watched the live broadcast on their old television. Seeing Chinedu on screen was a shock. He wasn't just a prince, he was a king in waiting, majestic, distant, and powerful. The cultural gap yawned wide before her. But as the camera zoomed in on his face during the ceremonial rites, Amara saw what others missed. She saw the emptiness in his eyes, the lack of a smile that never reached them. She saw the same trapped young man she had met in the library, now imprisoned in a crown of gold and coral beads. In that moment, her mistrust wavered, replaced by a startling, painful surge of empathy. He was as much a prisoner as she felt. The empathy was a dangerous emotion. It made Amara vulnerable again. A few days after the festival, she was walking home from the market when a sleek car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down to reveal a beautiful, impeccably dressed woman, Adaobi, the minister's daughter. Her smile was as cold as her diamonds. "You must be Amara," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I think it's time we had a talk." For your own good, she gestured for Amara to get in. Feeling cornered, Amara complied. Over overpriced coffee she didn't touch. Adaobi delivered her warning. "You are a little distraction. A story Chinedu will tell when he's older, but I am his future. Our union has been planned for years. It unites kingdoms and political dynasties. Do you really think your love can compete with that? Be smart, little girl. Walk away with whatever trinkets he's giving you and save yourself the heartbreak." The encounter was designed to humiliate, and it worked. Amara left the cafe feeling small and foolish. The cafe feeling small and foolish. The old fears and insecurities came rushing back. Adaobi was right. This was a world of power and alliances, and love was the cheapest currency. She had been a fool to even consider his letter. Chinedu found out about Adobe's interference through his network and saw red. This was the final straw. He could no longer be a passive participant in his own life. He stormed into a meeting between his father and the Minister of Finance. "I will not marry Adobe," he declared, his voice echoing in the large chamber. "My heart, my throne, my life belongs to me to give, and I have given it to Amara." The Igwe's fury was volcanic. "You will do your duty. My duty is to lead a people I understand and love," Chinedu fired back. "And she has taught me more about them than any of you ever have." The confrontation was the talk of the palace. Chinedu was effectively placed under a form of house arrest, his movements restricted. But the rebellion had been late. For the first time, he was fighting for something real, not running from it. He used Nnamdi to get a single urgent message to Amara. "They sent her to scare you. It means they are scared of us, of what we have. Please, don't let them win. Meet me one last time." The message was a gamble, a desperate plea thrown into the storm, and he had no way of knowing if it would ever reach her, or if she would even care. Papa Emeka fell ill. It wasn't serious, a bad bout of malaria, but the medical bills began to pile up, threatening to swallow their meager savings. Amara was frantic, running between the hospital, lectures, and work. The scholarship money couldn't be touched for this. She felt the walls of her world closing in, the relentless pressure of poverty reminding her of her place. It was in this moment of despair that a hospital administrator informed her that an anonymous donor had settled the entire bill. She knew. She knew with every fiber of her being that it was Chinedu. This act was different. It wasn't a grand public gesture. It was quiet, thoughtful, and addressed her deepest fear, losing her father. He hadn't done it to win her back. He had done it to ease her burden, even if she never knew it was him. It was an act of pure, selfless love. As she sat by her sleeping father's bedside, holding his hand, The last of her resistance crumbled. The prince, the title, the lies. They faded against the consistent, undeniable truth of his actions. He loved her. And she, God help her, still loved him. The message finally found its way to her through Wada, just as her father was being discharged. They sent her to scare you. It means they are scared of us. The words echoed in the new space that had opened in her heart. She made a decision. She would meet him. She told her father she was going to the library. Papa Emeka, weakened but sharp, looked at his daughter, saw the determined set of her jaw, and sighed a sigh of weary acceptance. He could forbid her, but he could not control her heart. Be careful, my child, was all he said. They met at the secluded spot under the mango tree, where they had first kissed. The air was thick with unsaid things. He looked tired, stripped of his royal pretense, just a man waiting for a verdict. You paid the hospital bill, she stated, not asking. He simply nodded. Why? Because I love you, he said, his voice raw. And because your pain is my pain. It's that simple. Amara took a deep shuddering breath. The lies, Chinedu. I don't know if I can ever get past them. He took a step closer. Let me spend the rest of my life earning your trust. Not as a prince, but as the man who fell in love with you in a library. He was close enough to touch now. The battle between love and mistrust raged its final war in her eyes. Love won. Their reunion was a fragile, beautiful thing. A truce built on a foundation of painful honesty. They started again, slowly. Chinedu was now completely transparent. He told her about the pressures from the palace, about Adaobi, about his fight with his father. Amara, in turn, shared her fears of inadequacy, the sting of humiliation, and her father's deep-seated distrust. They were no longer prince and commoner, but two young people fighting for a future that seemed determined to reject them. Their meetings were secret, their moments precious. Chinedu knew that this stolen happiness wasn't enough. He couldn't build a life with Amara in the shadows. He had to win over the one man whose opinion mattered most to her. Papa Emeka. He had to face him not as a prince seeking a consort, but as a man asking for his daughter's hand. It was a confrontation he dreaded, for he knew the old man's pride was a fortress as formidable as any palace wall. But for Amara, he was willing to lay siege to it with nothing but the truth. Chinedu arrived at the compound on a Sunday afternoon, dressed not in his royal finery, but in simple, respectful trousers and a shirt. He came alone, without guards or aides. Papa Emeka was sitting outside, mending a part of his keke. He didn't look up as Chinedu approached. The silence was heavy, broken only by the clink of his toes. Good afternoon, sir, Chinedu greeted, his posture straight but not proud. I have come to speak with you. Papa Emeka finally looked up, his eyes hard. Speak then, your highness. Have you come to offer me more money? To buy my silence? Or my daughter? Chinedu flinched but held his ground. No, sir. I have come to ask for your forgiveness. I lied to you. I disrespected your home and your trust, and for that, I am deeply and truly sorry. There is no excuse. He then did something that shocked the old man. Prince Chinedu, heir to the throne of a centuries-old kingdom, went down on one knee in the red earth of the compound. I am not here as a prince. I am here as a man who is in love with your daughter. I am asking for your blessing to court her, honestly and with intention. Papa Emeka stared at the kneeling prince, his anger warring with his stunned respect. No one, especially not a royal, had ever shown him such humility. Get up, he said, his voice rough. People are watching. Chinedu rose, his eyes never leaving the older man's face. Let them watch. My love for Amara is not a secret I will keep. For the next hour, they talked. Chinedu spoke of his plans not just for a life with Amara, but for the kingdom. He talked about initiatives for transport workers, educational trusts, ideas he had developed from seeing life through Amara's and her father's eyes. He wasn't making promises. He was sharing a vision. Papa Emeka listened, his initial hostility giving way to a grudging curiosity. He saw the sincerity in the young man's eyes, a fire that hadn't been there during his first visit as Chidi. This was not a boy playing a game. This was a man stating his purpose. When Chinedu finally left, Papa Emeka was left with his thoughts. The fortress of his pride had been breached, not by wealth or power, but by a simple, powerful act of humility. He looked at his daughter, who had been watching anxiously from the window, and gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't a full blessing, but it was a start. The battle for the father's heart had been won. With Papa Emeka's reluctant acceptance, a new weight settled on Chinedu's shoulders. He now had to win the war for his own birthright. He requested a formal audience with the Igwe and the kingdom's council of elders. The air in the throne room was thick with tension. He stood before them, not as a supplicant son, but as the future king, stating his case. The world is changing, he began, his voice clear and steady. A king who does not understand his people from within cannot lead them effectively. My time among them has taught me more than any tutor ever could. He presented his vision, a modern monarchy that was accessible, compassionate, and innovative. He spoke of public-private partnerships for youth employment, of digital platforms for artisans to sell their wares, of a kingdom that honored its past, but embraced its future. He then looked directly at his father. And I cannot do this with a queen chosen for political expediency. I need a partner with intelligence, integrity, and a heart that knows the people because she is one of them. I choose Amara, not despite her background, but because of it. She will make me a better man and a better king. The silence that followed was absolute. He had thrown down the gauntlet. The fate of his love now rested in the hands of tradition. The council was divided. The older chiefs saw it as a dangerous break with tradition, a sentimental folly. The younger, more progressive members saw it as a breath of fresh air, a way to connect the monarchy with the vibrant youth of the nation. The debate raged for days. Meanwhile, a new threat emerged. Adobe's father, the Minister of Finance, seeing his political alliance crumbling, began a covert smear campaign. Whispers started in the media about Amara, unfounded rumors about her character, her family, suggesting she used juju to bewitch the prince. The rumors, as they do, found their way to the university campus and to Ogbete. Amara found herself the subject of pointed fingers and hushed conversations. It was a different kind of battle, one fought with whispers and lies, and it was designed to break her spirit and make Chinedu's family reject her completely. The pressure was immense, a test of her resilience and her faith in the man she loved. Would she flee from the spotlight, or would she find the strength to stand? Amara's response to the smear campaign was one of quiet, stunning dignity. She didn't hide or issue frantic denials. She focused on her studies, acing her mid-semester exams with scores that topped the faculty. When a bold reporter ambushed her outside the university, asking about the juju rumors, she looked directly into the camera, her gaze steady and intelligent. My father is a Keke driver, she said, her voice calm. He taught me that the only magic that works is hard work, honesty, and faith in God. That is the only juju I know. My results and my character are my response to these lies. The clip went viral. The public, initially swayed by salacious gossip, saw her poise, her intelligence, and her quiet strength. The narrative began to shift. People started to root for her, for this brilliant, beautiful commoner who was standing up to the powerful with nothing but her integrity. Chinedu, watching the clip, felt a surge of pride so powerful it brought tears to his eyes. She wasn't just the woman he loved. She was the queen his people needed. Her strength was winning the public relations war that his royal training had never prepared him for. The public's growing sympathy for Amara, combined with Chinedu's unwavering stance, forced the Igwe's hand. The king was a pragmatist above all else. He saw the energy and hope the young couple was generating among the populace. He also saw the stubborn resolve in his son's eyes and knew that forcing him to marry Adaobi would create a resentful king and a fractured kingdom. He summoned Chinedu for a private walk in the palace gardens. "This woman," the Igwe began, his voice less stern than before. "She has a strong spirit. The people are starting to love her." "They love her because she is real, father," Chinedu replied softly. "And she makes me real." The Igwe was silent for a long time, watching the sunset paint the sky. A king's first duty is to the stability and prosperity of his kingdom. If this union brings that stability, then it must be considered. It wasn't a blessing, but it was a monumental shift. The door, once slammed shut, was now slightly ajar. Chinedu felt a hope so fierce it was dizzying. The final obstacle was a formal traditional investigation into Amara's lineage, a last resort by the traditionalists to find a reason, any reason, to disqualify her. The lineage investigation was a source of immense anxiety for Amara. She came from a proud but simple lineage of farmers and traders. There were no kings or chiefs in her family tree. She feared this would be the final insurmountable barrier. The palace historians and genealogists spent weeks researching. To everyone's astonishment, they discovered something remarkable. Amara's great-grandmother, from a small, forgotten village, was not a commoner. She was the daughter of a powerful warrior chief who had saved the Igbo kingdom during a great intertribal war centuries ago. The alliance had been crucial, but the records had been lost to time. The discovery sent shockwaves through the council. Amara was not a nobody. She was the descendant of a hero, her bloodline already intertwined with the kingdom's history. It was the sign the traditionalists had been waiting for, a divine validation from the ancestors themselves. The last legitimate objection crumbled. The path was finally clear. The union was no longer just a love story. It was a fulfillment of an ancient covenant, a reuniting of lineages that destiny had always intended. The day of the official betrothal ceremony, the Ikwaka arrived. The palace grounds were packed with dignitaries, villagers, and a horde of journalists. Amara, dressed not in expensive lace but in a beautiful, simple George fabric, stood beside her father, whose chest swelled with a pride he had never known. Chinedu, in his royal regalia, looked not at the crowd but only at her. When it was time, Papa Emeka, his voice strong and clear, presented a symbolic kola nut and a single precious yam, not the mounds a king would offer, but the most sincere offering a poor man could give. The Igwe himself received it, a profound gesture of acceptance. Then, Chinedu stepped forward. In front of his entire kingdom, he spoke his vows not in the stiff language of royalty but from the heart. "Amara, you saw the man behind the title. You loved Chidi when he had nothing to offer but his heart. I offer you that same heart today, and the throne beside it. Will you be my wife?" The crowd held its breath. Amara, her eyes shining with tears of joy, smiled the smile that had captured a prince's heart. "Yes," she said, her voice carrying across the silent grounds. "I will." The wedding was a national spectacle, a beautiful fusion of tradition and modernity. The internet was flooded with images of the Keke driver's daughter who became a princess. But for Chinedu and Amara, it was a deeply personal day. They honored both worlds. The traditional ceremony was lavish and precise, while the church service was filled with the joy of their university friends and the community from Obete. When they danced into the reception, the crowd erupted. It was a celebration, not just of a union, but of a new era. As they sat on the high table, overlooking the sea of happy faces, Chinedu leaned over to his new wife. "Are you ready for this?" he whispered. Amara looked out at the crowd. at her father laughing with chiefs, at her friends dancing with princes. She then turned to her husband, her king, her Chidi. "With you by my side," she said, her hand finding his, "I am ready for anything." The love that had been born in a lie had been forged in fire and had emerged stronger, truer, and ready to lead. Married life within the palace was an adjustment for Amara. The formality, the constant presence of aides, the unspoken rules. It was a world away from the face me, I face you compound. But she navigated it with her characteristic grace and intelligence. She refused to be a silent, decorative queen. She established her own office and began work on her pet project, the Onye Aga Ije, the Traveler Foundation, named in honor of her father, focused on educational scholarships and skills acquisition for children of transport workers and low-income families. Chinedu watched with admiration as she won over the most skeptical palace staff with her humility and her sharp mind. She didn't order people, she worked with them. She became his most trusted advisor, her perspective grounding his policies in the reality of the people they served. Their love, tested by fire, became the bedrock of their reign. They were a team, a partnership that balanced the weight of the crown with the warmth of a shared dream. A year into their marriage, the kingdom was thriving. The initiatives Chinedu and Amara had championed were bearing fruit, fostering a renewed sense of hope and national pride. The story of their love had become a modern-day folktale, a testament to the power of authenticity over arranged alliances. One evening, as they sat on their private balcony, watching the lights of Enugu twinkle below, Amara rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked softly. "Being Chidi? The anonymity?" Chinedu thought for a moment, holding her close. "No," he said honestly, "because I don't have to be him anymore. With you, I can be both Chidi and Chinedu. I can be the man who loves roasted corn with his wife by the roadside, and the prince who fights for his people in the council chamber. You didn't just accept me, you made me whole." In that moment, the journey felt complete. The prince who had run away to find himself had not only found love, but had been found by it, and in the process had become the king he was always meant to be. The news broke on a sunny Tuesday morning. The crown princess was expecting an heir. The kingdom erupted in celebration. For Amara and Chinedu, it was the final, beautiful seal on their union. As her pregnancy progressed, Amara continued her work, often with Chinedu's hand resting protectively on her growing belly during public engagements. The image of the young, progressive royal family became a symbol of a bright, new Nigeria. One afternoon, Papa Emeka visited the palace, not as a subject, but as a father and soon-to-be grandfather. He found his daughter in the library, the very place where her story had begun. He looked at her, this queen, his little girl, and his eyes filled with tears of pure joy. "You see, Papa," Amara said, taking his calloused hands in her own, "love didn't make me small. It made my world bigger." Papa Emeka could only nod, his heart too full for words. The prince and the Keke driver's daughter had not just found a happy ending, they had built a new beginning, a legacy of love that would rule the kingdom for generations to come. Thank you for watching. Please put your comments down in the comment section on what you think about Chinedu's decision to marry Amara. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel so that you will be notified whenever we post new videos.